On this episode of the DTVC podcast, Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast is on, and we are looking at Deadliest Prey, the 2013 sequel to the AIP classic Deadly Prey, so stay tuned for that. And then next week, Will from Exploding Helicopter is back, and we are going to be looking at another round of Nepo babies. We're looking at David Carradine in Future Zone and Peter Fonda in South Beach, which you may know is probably a Fred Williamson and Gary Busey movie as well. So that'll be next week. And then we are recorded through March. So all of our March episodes are ready. We are scheduled for episodes through April. So we are looking in pretty good shape here in the coming months here. So we got some exciting stuff on the docket for the end of the month. We've got of course Ty's going to be doing his monthly spot. John Crossman after Movie Diner, we're recording another erotic thrillers episode with him, and then Scott Murphy, we had him back on to talk a little Seagal. So that all of that should be good. So check that out again as we get through the month of March here. And then in terms of DTVC Extra, I've got some ideas maybe for something there, but we'll see. I'm kind of in novel mode right now, about 60,000 words in on the newest novel. So probably like in another week to 10 days, I should have that rough draft in the can, and then can kind of get back into doing other things again. Now, the YouTube channel, though I don't have any plans for that right now, it kind of dovetails a bit with the Substack because I discovered the Hard Justice video that I tried to put on YouTube that was blocked due to copyright issues. I was able to post it in its entirety. The only 5 minutes of it, that it was. I was able to post it on the Substack. So the DTVC Substack has the Hard Justice video that I made on there. So you can go check that out there. So that means this week I'm going to try to post the King of the Kickboxers one. Now, if you remember, I did that one, the Lauren Avedon movie. I tried to make that video. I think I did post it on Facebook so people could check it out on Facebook, but I'm going to try putting that one on Substack as well. So we'll see. Keep an eye out for that this week. So if you're not subscribed to our Substack, the link is in the podcast description. Again, it's free. You don't have to register anything. You just put your email in, and then every time I post something on the Substack, and anytime I post anything on the website or we post a new podcast episode, I put a link to it on the Substack as well. So you get everything in your mailbox, in your email box. You don't have to use Facebook if you don't want to. You don't have to use Blue Sky if you don't want to, or Instagram. If you want to get out of social media, I know right now is probably not the best time to be on social media. You probably don't want to see everything that's happening all the time. You want to break from it. Go to our Substack, subscribe there, and you'll get all the newest information on the site from there, and you don't have to use social media at all. So again, link for that will be in the podcast description. Now, speaking of the site, last weekend we reviewed Checkmate, Tubi original that had, it was starring Joyce Glenn, also had Lorenzo Lamas in his 36th film on the site. So we hadn't seen him in a while. We hadn't seen him since like October of 2021, I think. So good to get more Lamas on the site. Hope, maybe this year we'll get him in the 40 club. We'll see. At 36, he's pretty close. So, we'll see what happens there. But that was last weekend. This weekend, we're going to be looking at, for our PM flick of the month, we're going to be looking at Intent to Kill, starring Tracy Lords. Also has Scott Peterson from, what was that, Gilmore Girls that he was on? And then Yaphet Kotto. Of course, we know Yaphet Kotto, right? Homicide, Life on the Street, Running Man, the original Running Man. Unfortunately, he passed away. Wasn't able to do the new Running Man, but at least he was in the original one. Yaphet Kotto, Emmy Award-winning actor in a PM flick. So that should be a good one. That'll be this weekend. And then in 2 weeks, I'm going to cover Final Heist, another Tubi original that stars Tim Abel. Also was written by Richard Pierce, who has been on the podcast here. Check that one out in 2 weeks' time. I think that is kind of everything in terms of, what we've got going on our different sites here. But I have been making guest appearances on other people's podcasts. Just this past weekend on Sunday, March 1st, the newest episode of Exploding Helicopter came out, and I was a guest on that to talk about White House Down. So you can check that out there. There's a few interesting things that come up in that one. First, he mentions about how many bathrooms are in the White House, because that's part of the movie, and I made a joke about being almost 40 and how, when you get, almost 50, not almost 40, almost 50, and how when you get to this age, you don't pass up a bathroom. So that's probably why the White House was made for old men, right? Because we've got plenty of bathrooms in there. So anyway, there's a lot of jokes like that in that episode. It was a really fun time being on his show. So check that out. Also, I did record with John and Mo, I guess it's not Mo Porn anymore. It's Mo Helovitz. But I recorded with them for the PM podcast where we talked about Angels of the City. So I think that was the first time I'd recorded with both of them together since I was a guest on Drunk on VHS, which Drunk on VHS episodes, you can find those on the After Movie Diner site. John has the whole archive of those. But that was my first foray into podcasting. I was a guest on, there's two episodes that we did. I think one was Hard to Die, a Jim Wynorski movie. And then we did, what is it? Something of the Heroes, the one with with Rutger Hauer, where there was that game where it was like a dog skull or something like that. Blood of Heroes or something like that. We discussed that one as well. So that was my foray into podcasting. And then on the back of those two episodes, they were like, "Hey, we're doing a night of podcasts. Do you want to do your own podcast on this night?" And that's how this podcast was born. So it's been over 10 years since I had podcasted with the two of them together. So so check that out. Keep an eye out for that on the PM podcast. Again, it's Angels of the City. Well, I guess at this point, the last thing to discuss is my newest novel, Mark in Sales. You can get it on Kindle Unlimited, and paperback. Again, it follows Mark, a person who's really good at selling cut rate health insurance. But as he realizes that the time that he spends away from his family while he's out selling this cut rate health insurance, it's taking its toll. He's losing his connection with them. But at the same time, he's starting to find out about what it's like for the employees of these companies that have this bad insurance. The different the services that are denied, medications that are they don't get to have, providers they can't see anymore. So he's faced with a dilemma. Do I continue on with this job, or do I try something new? And at the time he's having this dilemma, he is given the kind of the promotion that he's always wanted. The book does kind of, deal with a lot of sort of, I don't want to say Gen X themes because they are a little bit younger. They're kind of closer to my age, the characters in the book, born in the late 70s. But it kind of deals with sort of, changing life and how, as an adult, things change quicker on you than you expect. And suddenly, kids that you have are older, a job that you've had that you thought you only had for a few years, you've now had for 10 years, a lot of those kinds of things, and what it's like to have to be responsible for other people. And, all of that stuff is explored in the book as well. So definitely check that one out. Again, it's Mark in Sales. The link is in the podcast description. All right, as we close in on 7 minutes here for this cold open, why don't we have John from Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures playing our theme song? And when we come back, Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast is on, and we will be looking at Deadliest Prey. Hey everyone, welcome back to the DTVC podcast. As always, this is Matt here, and I'm joined once again by a special guest. We've got Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast. Welcome back, Todd.
Hello, thanks for having me back. I apologize. I don't necessarily sound like my normal self. I'm fighting a cold, but we'll muddle through here, I guess.
Yes, I'm in the same boat too, and I think one of the things that's hurt my ability to get over the cold, like I think I'm getting over the cold part of it, but like I feel myself close to coughing as we're talking right now. But having to run errands here in Philadelphia because we don't have a car, so I walk everywhere, and it's been around 20 degrees, which I guess for our Celsius, our people in the rest of the world, it's not America. I think that's maybe negative 10 Celsius. So the cold air has just, kind of hasn't helped things. I'm not like in a bronchial state, but it definitely doesn't help with the cure, the healing process.
I mean, it's been a weird season in general. I've actually, before even having to deal with a cold here, I've been dealing with allergy stuff through the, what is considered winter months, which is odd. And it's partially because here in Denver, we've had so many warm days. I mean, even right now, we're recording this in the early morning, but we're expecting to be up in the 60s today here in Denver on the end of January, and that's unheard of. So, you've got, some trees that have had buds and things like that. We've had very little snow here in Denver this year. Up in the mountains, they've had a good amount, but here, I think we're still probably under a foot for the season. So that's pretty wild. It's been a weird year.
Yeah, it sounds like you're getting what Philadelphia usually gets. Like usually in Philadelphia, it's like 30, like kind of near freezing, but then like kind of, at night it might be near freezing. Then during the day it's like 40s, 50s. And then we get that stretch of like 60s like you're talking about. And it takes like one rainstorm in that window of like the 60s for the trees to suddenly be like, oh, is it spring? And because that's for me with the pollen, I believe it's the elm trees that we have here in Philadelphia that kill me. And we've got a park like a block away from us. And so it's like one rain followed by a windy day, and that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much.
Well, and at least here in Denver, like I say, we do still get that when it's nighttime, it gets cold type of a thing, mainly because of the altitude. I mean, where I am, I mean, they call Denver the Mile High City. It's got 5,280 feet. Where I am, we're actually quite a bit above that. I'm closer to 6,000 feet here. So yeah, it still gets cold at night, even when you have 60 degrees during the day.
Yeah. It's amazing how that like, obviously you live out there, you've acclimated to it, but it is like, I remember my company had a thing out in Denver in 2018, and it was like one of those deals where it's like they had to keep telling us, like, if you're drinking, make sure you get water in between, and all of that. Yeah, because I mean, for me, I experienced it much more because my friend and I used to go hiking out in Colorado, and so we did a trip in 2012 where my buddy, he wanted to bag as many 14,000 foot mountains as he could, and I would go on some with him. So I had a plan to do, I think it was Mount Princeton with him, and we camped out. We would like bivouac out of the back of the car. We rent an SUV and bivouac out of the back of it. We parked at 12,000 feet, and I woke up in the morning, and I think I was like, I don't know, I was getting something out of the car, but just like walking around the car, and I was done. And my friend was okay; he was much better. But I was like, I can't do anything. I can't move. It was insane. Yeah.
I remember. I mean, this is going back years ago. I've lived here for 31 years now, but just a couple of years into that. I mean, let's say 7-8 years. So it'd been a while, but I didn't realize that it takes a long time to adjust when you're coming from, I grew up in the Chicago area at sea level, and then coming out here, I had a day that was just one of those days from hell at the airport where flights were getting canceled and such. And then finally I got rebooked on this flight, but it's like, oh, that flight leaves in like 15 minutes. You got to get over there right now. And it was on the complete other side of Concourse B at Denver International Airport, which is the longest one. I had to run across there. And by the time I got there, I was wheezing, and it's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was acclimated to the altitude, but I am not. And it's, like I said, it's been 7-8 years, something like that. So it takes time, but I always say my kids, they have lungs of steel because they were born here. They can deal with any of it. I'm still, a refugee from sea level. So, yeah.
Yeah, you bring them out to the I was trying to think where's that, like I was trying to think what those, like Leadville, for example. That's we.
Oh yeah. Oh gee.
Yeah, so my friend and I stayed out there, and so my book that I wrote 2 years ago, Nadia and Aiden, about these twins from France who traveled the U.S. in the late 2000s. I was picking places that I had visited myself, and so Leadville was on the list. And they go and stay with a couple that own a pizza place there in Leadville.
It's a cool spot, yeah.
And Mount Elbert, because I did do Mount Elbert, and that's one that for people that are looking to hike, and looking to do big mountain, it is just 1 foot in front of the other, but. I mean, we flew out there, we, again, did our bivouac thing, and then went the next morning. And I was like, I couldn't believe it, like because it's not very steep, it's not like it's not an aggressive, but it's just, again, like the altitude, it's quick
Yeah.
and it gets you,
Yeah.
because I always suggest it for people, like, compared to Mount Whitney, which I believe is like only 10 feet taller or something like that than Elbert. It's a lot less, technical to hike it. But,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got some friends that do that kind of thing. I tend to do the very basic level hiking trails, things like that. And I do enjoy that stuff, but yeah, I'm not one of those people that's out there crossing all the 14ers off my list. I do have several friends that's their thing, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's a little more strenuous than what I tend to do.
Right. Well, because I think the thing that was, for me, obviously in New Hampshire, where I grew up, hiking, the tallest peak there is 6,200 feet, Mount Washington.
Yeah.
And yes, it's definitely like Mount Washington is a more aggressive hike than Elbert in terms of like the steepness, like, of the trails and everything. But it doesn't have that altitude to knock you out. And also, like, none of the trails in New Hampshire have any of the kind of technical aspects that pretty much, like, I think it's like Elbert and a few others that you can just do a 1 foot in front of the other kind of deal. Most of them, it's like either you've got to know some rock climbing skills or be able to, like, free climb over things. To get to the trails in a lot of cases, like I think we did Mount Antero, which I believe was featured on like a mining reality show on Discovery or History or something like that. But there was like a 4-wheel drive road, and I was like, oh, the map says that's the road. And my buddy, luckily the SUV we had 4-wheel drive, but I had no idea what a 4-wheel drive road is in Colorado. It's essentially just a whole pile of rocks going straight up. And
Yeah.
And it's funny, we met these guys that were like, oh, you should drive up to the peak. You can drive up there. And he's like, just remember that, if you fall over the edge, you'll probably be alive for the first 3 tumbles, and then that'll be it.
You mentioned the mining stuff, and that's a wild part of the history out here. There's a trail that I've done, and it's just a simple little loop thing. It's not strenuous at all, but it's out in Victor, Colorado, which is this mining community. It's a very, very small place that once upon a time was like the one of the biggest cities in Colorado because of the mines, and everybody went there. But now it's just this tiny place. But they've got this wonderful little trail that's called the Vindicator Valley Trail, and it takes you around these sites on the hillside that were all these former mines. And so, there's some structures still there and various things. So, you get to see all the, it's ghost town stuff, essentially, these old mines that are there and falling apart. But, it's the kind of thing where they're like, you must stay on the trail stuff. And it's like, yeah, because like the ground out there is unstable. Like you go walking around those ruins, you might fall through a shaft or something like that. And, but it's wild, that history of things, like all these mines that are everywhere. I mean, there's some roads you drive along and it's like, oh, look, there's a structure that's falling apart. That was a mine once upon a time, It's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because like we did the Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park.
Oh yeah.
When you drive out there, there's a few of those. Like there's kind of remnants too. Like there's people that still live in some of them. And who knows what kind of industries are there now that people would be living off of. But yeah, it's like this whole like boom that happened that suddenly went bust, and to see the remnants of that kind of thing, it's like it's such a fascinating thing. We always think about building, right? We think of obviously, like even in Colorado where you are, like I remember Aurora going out there when it was still like developing, and it's like you'd see a road that just kind of ended, but there was like strip malls and things like that as you get there. But then, think about it going in reverse, right? We don't always think about it going in reverse, and to see it like that, like so stark in those parts of Colorado.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Now we're going in a completely different part of the country here for the movie we're talking about today, Deadliest Prey. It was shot in, I don't know if it was still supposed to take place where the first one did, in like Riverside, Inland Empire kind of, LA area. But it was shot in Mobile. So we're going from...
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
So, yes. Now, I don't know if you've had occasion to go. It's at that area of the South.
I have been to Mobile. I used to travel a lot for work. And I can remember going to Mobile once. The thing that wowed me when I was there. Not at all the kind of environments they have in this movie, but I remember going to this seafood restaurant, that was like down on the beach and things. And it was, the type of thing where it was on these huge posts,
Oh
like,
yeah.
I mean, they're a good, probably 25 feet in the air supporting the restaurant. And I'm like, well, okay, it's because if the water rises or whatever, but that just struck me as wild because, yeah, we don't have those kind of problems here. So, but yeah, no, I just assumed that this was the same, kind of outside LA type of thing. Because I remember we brought that up in our discussion of Deadly Prey. That it didn't, it didn't quite make sense that, they're just a little ways out of these major metropolitan areas, yet nobody seems to realize that this evil general or colonel or whatever he was has this, massive troops and tanks and things like that that are sitting out there, But,
Right. Well, because I think, yeah, it did. I think because it's interesting. Yeah, I wonder where they said this was, where they meant for this to take place because, yeah, Mobile is kind of everywhere in the credits. So I was like, okay, that's where and I guess AIP, well, so this isn't an AIP movie, but it's, David Pryor, who worked with AIP. They used to do movies in Mobile, which I didn't realize as well. I watched one called Future Zone with David Carradine, and that was completely shot in the Mobile area as well. So, I wonder because in '87, when the first movie was filmed, you could still do a low budget movie in Los Angeles, especially if you were going, outside of that area. I don't know I feel like you still could shoot a movie in Riverside for a good amount. I feel like that's not too expensive. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think, we got to assume this is probably the same general area that the first movie took place in because, I mean, a lot of the same factors come into play here. I mean, we'll get into it. I'm sure this is basically a retread of the first movie. But, you've got Danton in his home and, the fact that at various parts in the movie, he goes back and forth between where he's trying to evade the evil army and then is able to make it back home and such. Well, so they didn't take him that far away. Okay, is it, would he have moved away, from Los Angeles to Mobile? Probably not. The evil colonel, or if that's not his rank, I don't remember exactly, but I mean, he gets released from prison, and so then he's right there and doing it, up to his old tricks again. So again, it's like, wouldn't he have been in prison in that same area? I don't know. Maybe it was a federal prison somewhere else. I don't know, but I just assumed probably we're still supposed to be in Southern California here. And yeah, it's just a history repeats itself type of a thing.
Right, exactly. Well, because 1987, that would have been, well before, obviously, the Oklahoma City bombing, a lot of the sort of the militia stuff that became in the '90s that became really kind of high on the FBI's radar. So it would have probably been realistic that the colonel would have just been, sent to prison for murder and probably maybe even like a second degree kind. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's weird because with California at that time, the laws were kind of different, where it's like, kidnapping in addition to murder could get you more time. He probably would have been, it would have been up and down about whether he would have gotten the gas chamber too. Cause I guess that was like, that's like the thing with, what's his name? I'm trying to blank on Manson, Charles,
Charles Manson,
right, where he was like sentenced to death and then they abolished the gas chamber. So then he would be up for parole. And I remember Court TV would show his parole hearings and they were like the most bonkers things ever. It was like, it's like this quirk in the system. It's like, nobody's letting Manson out of prison. He was like talking about how he was going to be the president and he was going to kill all of them and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, he's not getting out. So,
well, and that actually brings up an interesting point about this movie because, they release the bad guy,
right? Yeah.
Okay, what's his name again?
Hogan.
Hogan. Yeah. I should remember that because it always makes me think of Hogan's Heroes.
Right,
but
exactly.
No, it's a bad Hogan. But anyway,
when they yell it, especially when they
so
yell
he gets released. Yeah, Hogan.
Right,
yeah,
yes, exactly.
He gets released at the beginning of this thing, starts the whole ball rolling, and that's just it. It's like, okay, yep, go ahead. You're out of here. Crazy colonel who, built his own army, was out there killing people, doing these little hunts, just pulling innocent people off the road who are trying to take out their garbage, and then you go hunt them. Yeah, you're good. You're out there. There's no like parole officers, or, there's nothing, nobody's checking up on him. He's out there and he goes right back to his old tricks. There's nothing standing in his way. So yeah, I'm not sure the legal system is really working the way it should there.
No, exactly. Yeah, my wife and I like to watch. We used to watch. What was it? Something Love After Lockup. That's what Love After Lockup, and it would always show the significant other. So I got a siren going by here. It would show the significant other picking up their loved one from the prison, and then almost always, in a lot of cases, they would have to go to a parole officer within a certain amount of time. And so it would show like them maybe getting a hotel, and then, the whole closing the door because it's a reality show that, they were going to be hooking up or whatever, all that stuff. But it was like, you got to get to the parole officer by this time and get your terms for parole. But you're right. In this case, it's almost like 27 years was like his sentence, and he's just out and he's done. And nobody's, like they always talk about like with people who commit cyber crimes, right? That if one of your terms of getting out is you can't touch a computer, you'd think that like one of the terms for him getting out is you can't be near a militia. Right.
Well, and I mean, it's really, it reminded me actually of the beginning of the Blues Brothers, which is an all-time favorite of mine. It's just, Elwood comes to pick up Jake and we move on. And it's the same kind of thing going on here, except that, the Hogan's got the hot warrior woman that comes and picks him up, and which I'm like, okay, how does she fall into things here? Because there was, the warrior chick in the first one who was somebody different, and now we've got this new girl. And it's like, well, how did he get hooked up with this girl? If he's been behind bars for 27 years. I mean, she looks like she's about 27 years old, maybe not that much older than that. So how did he get mixed up with this girl? Is she like a fangirl? Has she been writing him, she's like a pen pal or something like that? I don't know.
Because that's all it would have taken, right? It's like that's like one line of script. I think that's one of the things about this movie is it was so committed to essentially recreating elements from the first movie that, okay, we've got to have the warrior woman element. They wanted her to be roughly the same as the same age as the warrior woman from the first movie, despite the fact that Campbell himself, that the actor Campbell who played Hogan, has aged 27 years. But they figured, okay, we're going to keep her young. But yeah, it would have been like one line of script, while we were writing in prison, or How I Met You in Prison, and I think with a movie like this, we would have even forgiven it if it was plot exposition. Like if she had just dropped it as an unnatural line in conversation to him, we would have accepted it, but you're right. They don't even explain it. It's just like, she has been coordinating things for him on the outside to set up this whole new militia for him. And then also set up this whole camera setup that I guess they had gotten a couple of venture capitalists, I guess. Or I don't know who these two guys are that give him $8 million to set this whole thing up, who he then, of course, just kills after the fact, right? He's just, they get killed off screen. But the whole concept of that too, it's like she was somehow working with him to like set all of this up and why? We don't, again, it's just he wants to get Danton back, and she was able to, I guess, coordinate all this for him.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with the cameras is like the one new element of the movie. I mean, basically, this is Deadly Prey all over again. Some of the beats are the same. It's like, it's kind of, my brain wanted to say it's Evil Dead 2, because, Evil Dead 2 is essentially a retread of Evil Dead, but Evil Dead 2 is better and it goes a bit crazier. I can't say that about Deadliest Prey. But, adding the whole, the cameras, the internet angle, I mean, it's a good device to try to throw in there. They don't quite pull it off. I mean, they seem a little bit out of touch. It's the type of thing where you feel like some of the technology that they're doing there, you're going, I think you're a good 3-4 years behind the times for 2013. It doesn't feel fresh with that, and I feel a little bit like those two guys that he offs that are like the investment guys, or kind of the techie bros. It feels like they watched The Social Network a few too many times and are like, oh, let's put a couple guys in there like that, and yeah.
Yeah, well, because so interesting. So one interesting point that I wanted to ask you about too is that okay? So this movie takes place, whatever 27 years after the first one. It's made in 2013, and I think the thing that struck me watching it in 2026 wasn't that 1987 and 2013 were so far apart. It was having to wrap my mind around the fact that 2013 was more than 10 years ago. I think that was the thing I was having the most trouble with as I was trying to make sense of this movie.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's a movie that's kind of exists in its own time. There's a lot here that you could have plunked into any time, but it is like, I don't know, how do I say this gracefully? I think that these returning cast members that they have are certainly giving it a valiant effort, but are they moving a little bit towards the long in the tooth side of the scale? Yeah, I think so. I couldn't believe like that Ted Pryor. I was like, is this the same guy? Because he looks so different in this movie. I mean, like the thing I remember about the first one, and correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't go back and look at any bits of the first film just to refresh my memory, but I was like, doesn't he have more like, like bright blonde locks and such? And now, granted, he's got 27 more years here, but it's this short and much darker hair, and I'm like, where's the Thor look from the first film? It just doesn't look like the same guy anymore.
Right. Well, because so he was born in 59, so that would put him in his mid 50s, which on the one hand, I was like, okay, he looks like he's moving around pretty well for mid 50s, but on the other hand, it's like, you look at someone like, think of like some of the actors that we see now, like Scott Adkins, or, I was trying to think of big names, like, like Jason Statham, I think is a great example.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Jason Statham is probably a few years older than Ted Pryor. But I think the other thing is, I think Jason Statham has been making movies consistently, over the past 20 years or so, whereas Ted Pryor didn't have any reason to keep himself in shape, because he wasn't, making all these movies. But it is interesting, like how much more, he looked more like what he would be now today, in his mid 60s, in that role. And I guess it's one of those things. I think they said the guy who played Thornton, because again, Thornton, of course, he dies very famously in the first movie.
Yeah.
And, Fritz Matthews is the actor. So what they do is they say it's his brother. And, Hogan makes a joke, you look a lot like your brother. And he's like, yeah, only I'm better or whatever. But
well, he also, it doesn't look much. I mean, he has aged, and as we all do. I mean, I don't look the same as I did 27 years ago, but I had to like, is that the same sunglasses guy from the first film?
Right.
I don't know. It doesn't, the fact that Hogan go, oh yeah, you look a lot like your brother. I'm like, oh yeah, you look a lot like your brother 27 years down the line. Exactly. You're no spring chicken anymore,
Right. Well, and it said in the trivia, I don't know if this is true or not. Again, you never know with IMDb trivia, especially with a movie like this. It said that he lost 35 pounds to play the role, which, again, I don't know if that's the case or somebody was just making fun of making a joke about his character.
Yeah.
But I imagine, all of them probably. I mean, it's the same thing for me. I've definitely put on some weight, especially with how cold it's been here in Philadelphia. And I've been going off my normal walks that I usually do. If somebody was like, "Hey, Matt," I don't know. I keep trying to think. I'm not like I made a movie, 20 years ago. But if I did make a movie 20 years ago, and somebody's like, "Matt, you got to play this part that you were playing, when you were in your mid 20s," I'd be like, "Yeah, I was, I didn't weigh a lot in my mid 20s. I don't know how am I going to do that? It's So it's
well, and I mean, I'm not trying to pick on. Really, the weight is not the thing at all. I mean, they've got a little bit more girth. These guys are still muscular. These
Yeah.
guys could still make, Swiss cheese out of me in 10 seconds. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm no one to talk. But it's more just, I think like in the case of Ted Pryor, I'm looking at him and going, even the facial features, I'm thinking looks a lot different. It took me a moment to go, okay, yeah, this is the same guy. And again, I'm not trying to say that as an insult in any way, because we all age and we all look different over time. But this is a movie where they're kind of expecting you to remember from the first film, oh yeah, this is this guy that you know and love from this film 27 years ago. And here's this other guy, and he was the bad guy. And here's this guy. Oh, he looks so much like his brother. And, it's the type of thing where even having watched Deadly Prey not that long ago. I mean, how long ago did we do that episode? A year or two ago?
Right, exactly.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But even having it been not that long ago that I watched the first film, I was still kind of going, all right, is this the same people? Because they don't really look like the same people. So,
Yeah, because I mean,
that's, not a slam. It's just, we all go through that aging and such, but it wasn't the type of thing where it was easy to just pick up right again and say, yep, these are the same guys. Here we go again.
Because you think about like Carrie Fisher, for example, in the new Star Wars movies. I hadn't seen her in much. I think maybe the last thing I had seen her in was Hannah and Her Sisters. I think because obviously after the Star Wars movies, I mean, she'd done some commercials here and there, and I guess she would have made appearances. But it still had it's not like I hadn't seen. I've been seeing all kinds of stuff about Carrie Fisher, and at least it was Carrie Fisher. Yes, she had aged, but you knew it was Gary. I mean, I guess you said the same thing about Harrison Ford. Again, it's not like I'm seeing him in a ton of stuff between. I mean, I think maybe Dial of Destiny he did.
Sure.
But it's like it's Harrison Ford when you see him. You're right about Danton, where he, I mean, I guess part of it too is maybe the fact that this is shot on digital film and it's like very bright, whereas the 87 movie, it's shot on probably like rough cuts that they were able to get. Probably I don't know what they call them. You get the extra pieces that the studios don't need. The extra piece of film.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it had a look of like it was just a cloudy day the entire time. So you've got like the brightness of Mobile, Alabama, and then this cloudy day, which again it was Riverside, California. It probably was bright and sunny too, but just the way the film looked. So I think that's another piece of it where it's like, everything was so dark in the first movie, and now it's so bright in this movie, and it's sort of like it's accentuating all of the differences between the two.
Though, I mean, talk about differences and similarities. I would say the similarities far outweigh the differences when it comes to this film, because, like we said, this is basically a retread. We're hitting on some of the same beats. I mean, there's even, I will say, like, one of the first things in the movie where they are kind of like doing something the same as they did in the first film. There's almost a little sly wink, like they turn it into a humorous moment. And I'm thinking, of course, of when Danton gets abducted because he's taking his garbage out, which is exactly what happened in the first film. When the wife asked him to take out the garbage, and it's a new wife, by the way, because first wife got killed in the first film, right?
Oh, yes. I did double check that myself because I couldn't remember but she did. Yeah.
Yeah. But, she asked him to take out the garbage. And I'm going, oh my, no, really? This is, he took out the garbage in the first film. That's where all the trouble started. And then he does that. And the guy comes and asks him for directions, just like in the first film. And I'm like, oh no, really? You don't see this coming? And it turns out to be okay. But then he gets smashed in the face and they drag him. And it's done like it's a comedic beat, so I kind of appreciated that. But then the movie kind of keeps going with things that are, repeats from the first film. Maybe the reason why the driver in this version was not one of the bad guys and was not a problem. You can tell because he didn't have a cracked windshield like the first film,
Yes, right. That was a very new truck. It looked like that he had. Yeah, sure. Yeah. And it's funny because the only other vehicle I think we get in the movie is the three computer hackers. And It's so interesting. I want to talk about those three computer hackers because they're kind of the newest element of this film. They're the one element that wasn't in the previous film, and I wonder.
True that.
Exactly right. We have one of the characters, and she was kind of one of my favorites. Actually, I was a fan of her. Played by Suki Rose Samaka. She played Candy, and she had your classic hacker haircut, where it's like kind of cut on the side and longer on the other side, different colors weaved in, and she said true dat to everything except one time she said true business. I don't know why.
Like, we're trying to make true business a thing now, it's like fetch or something like that.
And I wonder if like David Pryor had a kid that was like a teenager and he said true dat to everything that David Pryor's like, okay, the one thing, if we're going to modernize this we're going to have modern characters in this, that's what she's going to say the whole time. And she says it every time. So the idea is that these hackers are watching. They're bored because they've essentially won every video game. So it's Candy and then two other people. We have one character's name is Frankie. He's got a mustache. He's played by Dimitri Simakis, and then Zach Carlson plays Steven, who looks like a poor man's Adam Scott. I guess that's maybe like the best that's what describe him. But they're sitting at their computers at a kitchen table, all using their computers, and they're like, you know what, we've beat every game. What are we going to find for fun? And then they find the feed of Danton. Running around killing everybody. And so this feed is being broadcast everywhere. There's a bar that's watching the feed, which is just crazy. Like this idea that like a bar, like especially in 2013, just imagining a bar hooking up to a streaming service to, if anybody's ever been at a bar where you just had to ask them to change the channel to another game. Now they would be able to, they've got all the streaming services. I remember there was a bar near us that was actually a really cool, like Gen X vibe. Unfortunately it closed. But for South Philly, you don't usually get bars like that where we are in deep South Philly. But it was a really cool vibe in there. And they would play the Comet channel on a streaming on their TV, which was really cool. You'd get like, I think one time it was a Scarecrow. It usually was like 60s sci-fi movies, while you're having your beers and relaxing. So when you get to today, you could do that. But back then, I don't know any bar that would be able to pull up a streaming service.
No, I mean they'd be sitting there being like, can you change it over to the feed of this guy that's running around in the forest, trying to not get killed? And the guy'd be like, dude, it's locked on ESPN too. I don't know, I don't know how to change the thing.
Right. So it's like, have you ever been at a bar where like, it's like suddenly like it's like, especially in during football season, NFL football season, where ESPN would have their pregame show, but then they didn't have any games. And so usually by like 1:00 when the games would start on, CBS or Fox or whatever, it would be like bowling or figure skating, I think. Right? It would be like things that, and if you were at a bar at that time, if the bartender wasn't on it, ready to change the channel, or, they'd have so many TVs and they didn't have it coordinated well. It's like, there would definitely be some bowling or figure skating on some of those TVs there.
I mean, that works for me. I tend to like the crazier ones, or not crazier, but the more unusual ones to start with, because I'm not a big football fan. I can remember one time I was at this place and like there were, it was big like college football type of vibe, and I'm not college football at all. And but they had sumo wrestling on one of the ESPN channels that day. So I'm sitting there watching sumo wrestling, and these people are coming, why aren't you watching the football game? I'm like, dude, it's sumo wrestling. Come on.
Yeah, the thing with college football for me is obviously I grew up in the Northeast, and I guess in Chicago you would have had, I guess, Northwestern is a, and I guess you're like kind of Big Ten country, so maybe you had it a little more than we did in the Northeast. But one of the things I was watching my UMaine team play on, one of the streaming servers, whatever. UMaine football, they were like Division I AA, so they were lower tier anyway. But I watch it, and I'm watching this. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. This kid like tried to catch a touchdown for Maine, and he fell and he dropped the ball. And I was like, oh man, you can't drop the ball there like that. And then they showed the replay, and it turned out he like severely injured his ankle. And there's this thought I had. I was like, man, that kid is like, he's young enough to be my son, And I'm like saying, like, giving him a hard time about how he can't, even though it's just doing it to the TV, I'm giving him a hard time about how he can't catch the ball. And it's like, I should not be that upset about somebody who's young enough to be my son, whether they can make a play. It's what now, granted, yes, most of the players now in the NFL are also that young. But at least they're getting paid, and it's like it's like a whole, professional thing or something. I don't know. There's just something about it that just felt unseemly for me, where I was like, yeah, I don't know that I need to be like, I can watch college because it's my, watch my alma mater play, but not like get into it on that level, which is like, man, speaking of the South, speaking of Alabama, it's like, yeah, the way people get into college football, God help you if you're a kicker and you miss a kick, or whatever. It's like,
I very appropriately went to a college that did not have a football team. So homecoming for us was in February because basketball season.
Oh, nice. Okay. No, so I went to UMaine where, while I was at UMaine, the president was trying to push the football team. So hockey is our number one sport. They won the national championship. They actually lost to, speaking of Colorado, they lost to Denver, I think, in like,
DU. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, as you said that, DU's got a pretty strong hockey program. Yeah.
Yeah. I think was it 02, I think they lost to Minnesota. I think it was like 04 or something like that. They lost to Denver in the national championship, but they beat UNH in 99. I was the one I remember. But the president wanted to push football because even at the 1AA level, if you have a good football program, it makes so much money for your school. But it just never took. Like UMaine hockey in that area, because it's near Bangor, Maine. It's like the equivalent of like a professional sport. Like, people that don't go to the school university still go to see the team. It's like that. That's like their team in that area. And so it's a big deal. But yeah, he also pushed basketball. I remember basketball again, lower tier, like still in the main division. But I remember, I think UMaine went like 30-2, but they lost their conference tournament. And that was the only automatic bid, was the conference tournament, because ESPN liked having the conference tournament mean that much because it got them ratings for those. So it was like they were 30-2. They had to play in the NIT tournament because there's no other bid for them. So yeah, but it's one of the things. You said you went to a school that did that had basketball. Was it like ACC country, or was it
I don't know the ins and outs of it. I'm afraid. I went to Bradley University in Peoria.
Oh, okay,
Illinois. Basketball is their thing there. So
So the thing about Peoria, I always remember the Bob Newhart episode where Bob and I can't remember the name, but the dentist that worked there, they went to Peoria to watch the Bears-Packers game because it was blacked out in Chicago. It's like there's always these remnants of old ways that things happen. Like, it's like, the idea of a Bears game, they don't do blackouts anymore. But,
right. Yeah.
This idea.
I remember that, I mean, like people would be on like the news, like the sports report on the news, trying to encourage people to go buy tickets to the Bears game so that the rest of us could watch it on television.
Exactly. I remember the Patriots, because where we lived in Kittery, Maine, it was like the very southern tip of Maine. So we got the Boston channels and the Portland channels. And at that time, Portland, Maine was not considered Boston's local area. So if the Patriots got blacked out in Boston, we could still watch them on the Portland channel. But there was a period where the Portland NBC channel had a falling out with the cable company. And so that channel was replaced by American Movie Classics. It was a new channel at that time. So for us to be able to watch Patriots games, we had to hook up the rabbit ears, or the antenna on the TV, to be able to get the Portland, Maine channel. So like in the early days, we're like hooking up, antenna to like get a football game. Just crazy concept that you just, again, now it's like you watch games on Prime, or it's like I was watching the AFC Championship game on Peacock on my computer. It's just a completely different time for that kind of thing.
Where my wife grew up, she was, a bit further out of the metro area of Chicago. So technically she was kind of between three markets. They were primarily Chicago, but they also weren't that far away from Rockford, and they were also closer to Milwaukee. So they had an antenna on their house that had a dial on it, and they could turn that so that would readjust the antenna on the roof to point towards whichever city. So I'm sure it's probably the type of thing where, like, if the Bears game was locked out in Chicago, they could just turn the antenna and watch it on the Milwaukee channel.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, that's what my grandfather had one of those, I remember. So that was like, yeah, he would turn the dial, and yeah, that was how we would, the same thing. I wonder if he did the same thing. Like you could turn it to get the Portland, because it was, my grandparents only lived about a 10 miles away, I think, south of us. So yeah, I never even thought of that he might have been doing the same thing, like picking up different football games. Even it's possible that like the Boston game might not have been on, because my grandfather, he kind of was like I don't want to say he was a front runner, but he would always like different teams. He didn't always like the Boston teams. I think he liked the Dolphins in the 80s, and so he was probably trying to get the Dan Marino, like the Dolphins, like the national game at that time. Yeah, it's crazy about that kind of stuff. I know the other thing too. Before we I move on from this topic, but with the Major League Baseball package, you can't get games in your local area, and I've read that like parts of, like, I think it's like Iowa, they're so close to Chicago and St. Louis that like, and depending on where you are in Iowa, you might even be considered close enough to Minneapolis that like you would have all these different teams blacked out that you can't get. That's like, those parts of the middle of the country. Yet here in Philadelphia, it's just Philadelphia that's blacked out, even though you're only an hour and a half from New York City and 2 hours from DC. Those all still count, because I guess if you're close enough to one city. So the way they do all that stuff is just kind of ridiculous, I guess.
Yep. It's a long way from Superstation WGN.
Yes.
Those were the days.
Yes. And that's one thing I remember when I first went to UMaine, we got WGN as part of the on-campus TV package. And it was like one of the coolest things ever was Friday afternoon Cubs games. It was like, after, my classes would be over, because I always made sure when I did my schedule up for the year that I didn't have any late afternoon Friday classes. And I remember that like when spring started, in the spring, like we get into like March and, like April, like it was just such a cool concept to just be like, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I guess it would be 2 o'clock our time. Yeah, I always love that.
Oh yeah, that's my youth. I mean, the Cubs were on at 1 o'clock every day. So
yeah, it's because I think they were one of the, did they still do that, the afternoon Friday game, because they were one of the only teams that did that, because obviously they were the last ones to get lights. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've been away from that area for so long. I don't know exactly what kind of schedule they do now. I think they definitely have moved towards the more traditional in terms of what everybody else is doing, the night games. But I mean, it was a real joy to be able to watch the Cubs every afternoon. So
yeah, it's one of the things about baseball that I just like in general, is that they do, midweek afternoon games. It's just yeah. But that was one of the things that I was I got to enjoy that for a brief period when I was going to UMaine with those afternoon Cubs games. But yeah, but I guess back to Deadly Prey. Where well, so our hackers, where yeah, I'm trying to think where we left off with our hackers, but they're deciding what they want to do, because we were talking about the fact that this thing is on all these different TV channels. That like how I guess the other piece of the fact that these things are on all these TV channels is that we never see a producer in like this little command center that they have in a factory. There's not a producer saying, go to this shot, go to that camera, like that. Yeah. It's like, it just happens to be exactly where we need to be. They're seeing it on the camera.
Well, and it's the type of thing too, where we see the shots of what's on the feed, right, and you're going, if there's nobody controlling it, they never would have had an image like that. That takes somebody saying, zoom in a little, or give me this, or what, but no, I mean, all we ever see about it is there's trees or there's cameras that are bolted to trees. That's it. And there doesn't seem to be anybody directing it, anybody which, I mean, that would have been a cool aspect of this. I mean, it's a low budget production. They don't have a lot of resources to work with. We say that over and over again, every movie we would talk about. But that would have been an interesting side plot if you had these guys that were the tech guys, the media guys, the guys who think they're producing some kind of great art here with this thing. And meanwhile, you've got Hogan randomly, screaming at them and shooting them because they're not doing what he wants them to do, things like that. That could have been a really cool thing to add to this to make it a bit different than the first film. As it is, they've got the seed of the idea here, but they don't really do much with it.
No, because you know what I love about that idea is that it would like the producers see Danton as the hero, and they start portraying him as the hero. Now, Hogan gets upset that everybody wants, everybody loves, Danton so much. Yeah, that it would have been perfect there. Yeah, it's a shame. Think about we're recording this the day after finding out that Catherine O'Hara passed away, and I think of Mighty Wind with Ed Begley Jr. as the producer, and him being in the room, like telling them where to put everything. And was it Ed Balaban's character who wanted the crane shot or something? And he's like, we can't do it. That's not something we can.
Well, yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that one, but
yeah,
that's a fun flick.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that the whole the techie thing, they have little hints here and there, to kind of like have this the power of the military versus the power of technology. They're that they have just a little bit. They could have done a lot more with it. It would have been a lot of fun. I mean, what we end up getting is basically where Danton's just going through pretty much the same beats as the first movie with slight variations. I mean, the encounters he has with the various soldiers for hire here, I think they do it better in the first film. Here the characters are very flat. I mean, here's something I never thought I would have said in a million years, that Deadly Prey has much more colorful characters than what we have here. I think, I just have this memory that even though the soldiers for hire were like, they enter and then we're going to, just, kill them in some way and move on. Yes, that happens in Deadly Prey, but I can remember those guys a bit more. Here, it's just literally feels like they've got half a dozen random soldiers and they're cycling them through over and over again. There's just nothing memorable about them.
No, because you bring up a great point, because I think Deadly Prey was made in amongst AIP Pictures, making a whole bunch of movies like this. So they had all of these guys that they would use in Man Killers and Final Sanction, all these other movies. So I think they all were used to, it's like, oh, you want me to play this character again? Like I think they'd gotten used to playing that part and doing this. Whereas in this film, it's like round up whoever you can. And it's funny. I was talking to Richard Pierce, who's a screenwriter for this movie. Right now, he's a screenwriter for a lot of like Lifetime movies and Tubi movies. But he did a movie called Sector 4 Extraction with a low budget action guy, Olivier Gruner. And Gruner was like telling him like, oh, well, we need some soldiers for a scene. And he said to Richard, just get your friends and be in the scene with us, And so he did. He got his friends together and he they played soldiers in a scene. And he said like, yeah, it was like horrible. So actor Tim Abel, who's been in, fought, he was a ranger, so he was in the service. And he, when Richard posted on Instagram about it, saying like, oh yeah, we did a horrible job or something, and Tim Abel was like, hey, you got to start somewhere. Richard was like, yeah, it probably just hurt his sensibilities knowing that we were playing soldiers, in the scene, because we were just there. But it had the same feel to me of just like, okay, whoever's a gaffer on the set, whoever's running craft services, get a few of your friends, let's put them in some army fatigues, have them hold a gun, and Danton's going to kill them. And and it shows when you have that versus all of these other people in the AIP that were just like this cadre of people that were working on all of these movies. They were doing tons of them, that they could play these parts a little bit better. And you had people like Art Camacho, for example, who does a lot of fight choreography for PM Entertainment movies, and then he's been directing movies himself. He was like coming up and he wanted to be in the movie biz. He wanted to like be a part of it. So when they had him as an extra in Man Killers, it feels a little bit different when it's like people that actually want to be in the biz. I don't think any of these people want to be in the biz in that way, right? So it's like, yeah, so it definitely shows for sure.
I mean, going back to one of the things we were talking about before, this potential subplot with the production of this live feed and whatnot. These people that they have cast as the soldiers for hire would have been much more better suited to playing those type of techie roles. I mean, some of the people that they show up here that, like I said, they look like more like they would be suited being the guys sitting there going, give me camera A, give me camera B, pulling the switches and such. They don't look like mercenaries. So, again, I guess they could have looked at the resources they had and gone a different direction and stuff. I mean, oddly enough, I mean, the only person that really looks suited to be a soldier for hire, a mercenary in this is the warrior woman. Is what's her name? Tara Kleinpeter? I don't know if I said that right.
No, I think that's it. Kleinpeter. Yeah.
This Sophia is the name of the character. But when she came on the screen, I was like, oh, she looks interesting. She's got this tough look to her. Looks like she could be, one of those wrestling women or something like that. She's just got this kind of strong vibe to her. I don't think they use her to full effect. There's very kind of underdeveloped hints that there's a romantic relationship between her and Hogan, which I'm not buying. I mean, she's out of Hogan's league in big ways. But interestingly enough, I think she's the most interesting character of the whole film.
No, I agree with you there. Yeah. And so she had worked with them on a movie called Night Claws. So that was like the movie that comes out before this that has, it's made by David Pryor. It's got everybody else that's in this, from Deadly Prey. And it also has Reb Brown in it. I haven't seen that one yet, but I think that might've been how she got hooked up with them. And so they were like, okay, well, we're making this other movie. Do you want to be in this as well? And, so she gets this role in that, and like you said, I think again to that point we were talking about with a lot of the other people in this movie, they're not people that are playing to have any kind of acting career. Whereas Kleinpeter, I want to be an actor, so she's like, okay, what's my character's motivation? What's my why would I read this line a certain way, all this other stuff where it's like the rest of the people, it's just like, okay, so I just walk through the forest and wait until Danton stabs me in the back. Okay. It's like also too, like, they probably didn't have a lot of takes, I guess. They didn't have a lot of time for takes. So it's also like, in a lot of cases, you can see too that they're not even really good at like, they aren't like stunt actors either, which I think that was the other thing is the older movies had more stunt actors in them.
Oh yeah. They're almost fighting in slow motion a lot of times in this movie. So
right. Yeah. Now one of the funny things is, I wonder if, we were joking about how long it took, how Danton was able to get from, in the first movie, he was able to get from the forest area to his house on foot very quickly. And
yes.
I wonder if that was like the one plot hole out of all of the plot holes in Deadly Prey. That was the one that David Pryor wanted to cinch up, because what happens is these three computer hackers, they have Maryland plates on their car. So I don't know if they drive all the way to California from Maryland or down to wherever they drive from, but they've got Maryland plates. They show up where Danton is and they give him a ride back to his house. And it's almost like, is that the one thing out of all the things that happen in the movie where David Pryor's like, I want to fix that part of it. This is how he gets back to his house now.
Yeah. I mean, that whole bit, I mean, I don't know. There was a part of me that was, kind of thrilled to see these, lowly techie nerds who, live in their parents' basements and, that, actually get out into the world and get into this action scenario. But it is a bit goofy the way things happen here. And I mean, it leads to some of the sillier elements of the film because, like we said, we're repeating a lot of the same beats that we had before. So we have to have the family end up getting in peril here. The wife is going to get kidnapped. The little boy has to come into play in some way here. I did find it was odd that they kidnapped the wife, but the son gets left.
Right.
And, maybe I missed it. I don't know. Like, I am fighting my way through a cold. I was fighting my way through a cold while I watched this movie. I don't know if I missed something, but did they just intentionally leave the boy? Was he hiding or something? It seems like they would have taken the boy with them, but they don't. And then that leads into this whole thing with Danton, sending the kid off with the techie nerds and all that stuff. It was a little wonky. It didn't quite work.
No, right? Because so what happens is, well, he's in there reenacting the scene with Klein Peter that he had with Hogan's girlfriend in the previous movie.
Yeah.
They're reenacting that sequence. Only now there's an iPhone involved, right? Instead of an actual
Mhm.
telephone, right? It's like he's sitting there, the phone rings. Oh, it's for you. Now they're using his cell phone for it. But then the techies show up and they say, "Oh, we found him wandering around outside." And
Okay. Yeah. Oh no, I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, but to your point, that's not very clear about whether he was hiding or if they just left him. They don't necessarily get into that too much. I mean, it's an interesting aspect of it because, on the one hand, from a logistics standpoint, it actually would make sense. Like, to have to deal with a kid on top of another woman to hold them. It would be a lot more strain on them to have to, especially going through the forest. But no movie ever really deals with that kind of logistics, right? It's like they just, kidnap everybody, and it's not really a big deal. So it is, like you said, it is interesting that they decided not to do that part of it. The only thing I could think of is that they wanted to be as they wanted as much symmetry with the other movie as possible. But then they also had this idea for the son that, again, this idea for the son actually works just as well if they had captured him. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know what the decision making process was with that.
I mean, given where things go with the son, which I won't spoil at this point, I'm sure we'll probably talk about it as we go on here. But I mean, they I think would have gotten more weight out of that if they had kidnapped the son.
Yeah.
And it's the type of thing where Hogan is like toying with things the whole time, and trying to get Danton's goat a bit because I've got your son here and all that stuff. I mean, you can still do that with the wife character, but I don't know. It just kind of takes on a different level when it's your kid. And again, given the way things go at the end of the movie, that would have given more weight to that. Jumping back to what we're talking about with the the tough girl at the house and that whole scene such. That was one of the most shocking moments of the film in general. I mean, this is low budget stuff. We've got a lot of violence that's done in not terribly, graphic ways. A movie like this, guy gets stabbed, guy gets punched, guy gets his neck, broken, things like that. But it's all done in this, very just sanitary, not, terribly graphic way. But spoiler alert here, folks. When Danton takes out the tough chick, I was like, whoa, we got ourselves a big blood splatter there, which is kind of not the way the rest of this movie is.
No, that's a great point, because it's like, this movie definitely used more squibs than another movie of its budget would have used. They would have, I guess in 2013, probably the technology wasn't quite there to mimic blood. From a CGI point, like now it's just, it would all be CGI. But to your point, like, because, obviously that's a big scene in the first movie that he takes out that woman, he shoots her. But like the way they do it, it's like there's a screen behind the woman's head, and essentially he just blows her head off. Like, just, it's just like this massive blood splatter.
I mean, it's like they threw spaghetti sauce at a window. That's what it looks like.
Right. Yes, exactly. It's kind of just out of nowhere. And then, I mean, to your point, at that point, the tech people come in with the son. And it's like, oh, hey, son. Yeah, here's this woman whose head blew off on the floor here. Yeah. They don't really mention that part. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that they don't. I mean, like Danton is annoyed that he's having to go through all of this again. But he doesn't say anything like, yeah, you killed my wife, because, I mean, granted, yes, he's got a new wife, but I can't imagine the new wife would be that, like, jealous, that he can't mention the old wife. I don't know if this is like,
right.
Janice Soprano, with the lasagna, with Bobby Bacala in Sopranos or anything like that. Like it's not quite to that, that level. But he never mentions her at all. Like when he talks about wanting his revenge on Hogan, he doesn't say like, "Well, you killed my wife, so I've got plenty of reason to want to kill you too." It never gets brought up, which is interesting.
I mean, it reminded me actually of another movie we talked about, and we brought up the same kind of point because you remember we did Cracker Jack 2.
Oh yes,
and and we brought up parts about Cracker Jack 1 in our discussion, and in both of those films as well, it's a case where there was a wife, a family that was eliminated by the bad guys, and then when we move on to the second film, it's not referenced really at all, or actually I'm trying to remember, there was a brief reference to it in the second one, but they don't mention the kids, if I remember correctly. That was the thing they left out. But again, it is the type of thing where it's just kind of the character has moved on and there's a new wife and there's really not a whole lot about the previous wife. Now granted, I mean, how many years were there between Cracker Jack 1 and Cracker Jack 2? It's not 27 like it is with this one. But yeah, I mean, it is that weird type of a thing where they're referencing the first film in this, but then they're also ignoring things about the first.
Right. It's like it's like that idea of like moving on like that. It feels more like an 80s or 90s TV movie where a guy has killed his wife. It's like like Gary Cole. Was it Fatal Vision where it's like did he kill his wife or not? And suddenly like he's just like living on a yacht somewhere after his family's died, and it's like, wow, he moved on pretty quick, and it's like, yeah, you don't want to look like Gary Cole moving on after he killed his family when your family members passed away. And these movies tend to do that a little too much. So, I mean, one thing I will say that they didn't use from the previous movie is Hogan's character does not sexually assault the new wife, which I thought was good, which I think that maybe it's a sign of changing times, that like that element was used in movies a lot more than it is today. And I think it was good that they didn't go there with that. It does seem to have like when he goes to the bedroom with Klein Peter's character, it does seem like he's a little bit rough there, but it seems like she's more into it. And it's like, okay, that's what's happening there.
I mean, he doesn't seem all that much like he's into it. I mean, there's a couple of times where she seems to be like, wink, wink. Hey, come on, let's go, and he's more concerned with, all his stuff that he's got going on. And even when he does go off with her, you kind of sit there feeling like she should be going, did you take your pills, old man? Things like, I don't know. But then they don't use the element, because I'm pretty sure in the first film, doesn't she try to seduce Stanton at some point? I mean, the warrior girl from the first film.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. I think she does. So they don't really go there. I when we had the scene where he gets back home and we've got Klein Peter there, I thought for sure she's going to try to seduce him, but they don't do that. So that's another area where they veer away. Oh, you know what is another thing where they veer away from the first film? Okay. And I think an improvement for Ted Pryor, they don't make him eat a worm in this one. He gets this feast on dog food in this one. So
right, which it didn't say in the trivia whether or not he was eating real dog food or not. It looked like the way he was like pulling pieces of it and like eating it. I mean, it could have been anything. It could have been Spam. It could have been tuna. But man, yeah, when he sees the can amongst this trash and it's like unopened, and he's just like, oh man, yeah, it's like he's getting his protein that way, I guess. He doesn't kill any mice or anything like that.
Well, and they don't have any of that New York iced tea or whatever it was that they had in the first film to drink. Isn't this the one where they had a lot of that?
It's a New York seltzer. Yeah. So
yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, it didn't say that. Didn't look like there was any product placement in this, which that was a key to AIP's movies. Like the one that I just watched recently, Future Zone, took place in the future, but it was using 80s Pepsi cans and Budweiser bottles. And so they were sponsored by Budweiser. I think another one that they did, was it Invasion Force? It was like a kind of a movie that was like there's like a movie being made, and then they end up being attacked by a militia in that one, and the people making the movie have to fight back the militia. But that was also sponsored by Anheuser-Busch, and it was like you'd see everybody drinking Budweiser, but then like these big cans of Busch beer. It was like a whole thing. I'm surprised they didn't try to lock up any kind of product placement, but I wonder if people just weren't interested.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of expecting it. I mean, there's this big liquor bottle sitting on Hogan's desk that it almost seems to be meticulously placed in such a way so that you don't see the label on it. It's just this random bottle sitting there, which, to be honest with you, the way it's sitting there with a cup on top of it looks a bit more like a bottle of like mouthwash than a bottle of booze. But I was half expecting to see the label for that popping up all the time, and for them to be promoting whatever product that was. But I mean, they almost seem to be avoiding the product placement in this one.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because I mean, again, it's a source of income, but yeah, they avoided it here. So yeah, like you said, the New York Seltzer, I was expecting at least to see, because actually in 2013, around that time, New York Seltzer had sort of like a relaunch. And so I remember here in Philadelphia, they were selling like probably 2014-ish. You could get New York Seltzer bottles. The only thing was that not long after, the mayor at the time, Jim Kenney, he passed a law to fund schools. It was like a soda tax. And the New York Seltzer stuff was already overpriced because it was like craft, soda or whatever. But then with the soda tax, it like completely priced itself out of the market. And so you couldn't buy it anymore. But I remember buying it, like little, 6-packs of it. And it wasn't bad. It was good stuff. But so it would have been interesting if that rebrand had coincided with, or that relaunch had coincided with this movie.
It would have been a brilliant piece of marketing. It's like, you've waited 27 years for Mike Danton to return, and guess what else is back? New York Seltzer.
Exactly. Yeah. The one thing I didn't because I hadn't had it in forever either. The thing I didn't remember was how sweet it was. Like it's because we're so used to the seltzer market now that is like all sugar free. That there's there's sort of you can get seltzer anywhere and it's got no sugar in it. So drinking that, I was like, oh wow, no, this is like lots of sugar. This is like actual soda. It was like I'd forgotten that was that a part of it. But and also they didn't have like that kind of like the foam-ish labels. It was more like a traditional kind of label that you get today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, another missed opportunity there. But yeah, I mean, one of the things, of course, is we get into, again, as we're kind of pulling moments from the previous movie, we've got Thornton, right? We've got the Thornton character. We all know how he died in the first movie, right? He's his arm ripped off and he gets beaten with it. So it's like, okay, how are we going to do that? And you see the two of them fighting, and Danton gets him into an arm lock at the same time that Hogan's coming at them with a machete, and it's like, oh, here it is. This is how it's going to happen. And it does happen exactly that way.
I mean, it is just, I mean, it's drawn out. I mean, the way that he just pulls his arm out and you see it coming a mile away. And it literally feels like they hold on it for like 10 seconds before he actually chops the arm off. Because you almost like to say, hey, you loved it in the first film. We're going to do it again. And I got to say, it does not have the oomph in this one that it does. I think it's in the way that they shot it or staged it or something like that. But I mean, I just remember in the first film, there's just this joy in watching this, this rubbery arm being smacked around and such. And here you almost barely even see it, so even though now the actual slicing of it is more graphic, you actually do get, some, bloody looking stump and things like that. It's much more graphic than the first film was. In the first film, it was, it was kind of like, you lobbed my arm off. Oh, okay, no big deal. In this one, we do get the bloody stump, but then, as he starts beating him with his own arm, it's just not well staged. He could be holding anything there. So yeah, it didn't work as well this time.
No, it's like they were doing it just to do it.
Yeah, right.
But in the sense of doing it just to do it, they thought it was this bigger deal that they were, like, oh, remember, you're waiting for it. It's coming, it's it reminded me of Charlie Cox, who played Daredevil, when he was in No Way Home, when they were shooting the scene the people making the movie were adamant, like, you got to take a beat when your character first appears on scene because everybody's going to cheer, everybody's going to applaud you being in the film. And he said when he saw the screening, when he went and saw a screening of the movie, nobody clapped. And he was like, "Oh,
Mm.
you do this whole big wait for me," and nobody clapped, nobody cheered for me. And it's kind of a similar thing where it's like, instead of just doing it, right? And if they had just done it, we would have gone, "Oh, they did it just like the other movie. That's great." They, like you said, they make this whole big build up to it, like, "Oh, we know it's coming. We know it's coming." And then for it to be like, we're doing it just to do it after this big build up was definitely a letdown.
I mean, maybe mix it up a little bit. Lob off a leg or something this time around,
Mhm. Yeah, like Monty Python, right? With
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, now, so maybe this is our point where we can bring in that's the spoiler point that you wanted to mention, where so it looks like Danton's stuck. All hope is lost. He's got guns on him. He doesn't know what he's going to do. When I don't know where somebody shoots the baddies that have guns on him, and it's like, well, who shot him? Who was that? Oh, it's the son holding a gun that's like 2 sizes bigger than his hand. Like,
And it comes from out of nowhere. It's like, wait, where'd the kid come from? I know the wife is there, but where'd the kid come from? And because it's the computer nerds who are supposed to be watching him, they were supposed to just go take him somewhere, not get mixed up in the trouble. And instead, what we don't see, it happens off of screen, I guess, is they're like, oh, hey, what the heck? Let's just go back out to the jungle and see what's happening. It's totally ridiculous. Is it, kind of fun and satisfying? Yes. Because it's like suddenly the kid's there. Boom, boom, boom. But it's just this left field thing that is just silly. But then, when it comes to the final shot of the film too, which I don't know if we want to jump into that just yet, but it's kind of, I don't know. It's fun. It's completely ridiculous, but it's fun.
yeah, no, I agree. Well, because what happens is our computer nerds, Danton's like, you shouldn't be here, and Hogan confirms that by shooting them and blowing them away.
I know.
I was very disappointed. I wanted a better
painful.
ending for them. So I was disappointed that they got it.
It was. I mean, part of it is because, like, when you watch these action movies, whether it's the big budget stuff or these, small direct to video, whatever, okay, you can, as a movie geek, you're sitting there watching it and you see a bunch of soldiers for hire, a bunch of muscle heads, all that, get what's coming to them. That's all fine, okay, no big deal. But then when you see the people that are more like you, the geeks, and they come into the movie and they get taken out, you're like, oh no, don't take out the geeks. It makes you feel just a little less safe, I guess.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, if the idea was supposed to be that, like, okay, the people who are safe at home don't know what it's like in combat, which is perfectly understandable. Totally get that. And, and so they should stay away, right? They, don't, being too curious about that can get you killed or whatever, or like, you don't know what you're up against or whatever. All great stuff. The thing is, the movie doesn't touch on any of that kind of stuff. It doesn't,
Right.
It doesn't go there for any of those kinds of things. It's like we get these characters that are, we kind of have fun with them, right? As the movie goes on, they kind of are more fun. I mean, poor, Candy, with her true, like, I would have liked one more Trudette before she met her end.
That's what she should have exclaimed when the kid takes them out. She go, "True that."
Exactly. So she kind of gets it bad, but then okay. So we get the wife. He's holding the wife. It kind of gets to this like end standoff kind of thing, I guess. Hogan's got him at gunpoint. And that's right, because I think when the friends show up, they kind of create a distraction, and he blows the friends away. And now it's just Danton and him, and he's got Danton at gunpoint. But we'd seen previously that he was setting up all these traps. That when he got back to the forest area with all of his equipment from the house, he'd set up all these traps. And we noticed that he starts circling Hogan. And for whatever reason, Hogan, who's got the gun, right, could just say, "Hey, don't move, don't go anywhere." Hogan starts circling with him, and he positions Hogan exactly where he wants him to set this one trap that essentially cuts off the bottom half of it, cuts him in half at his torso, and that's how he ends.
I mean, we're pretty much, removing the possibilities for, the deadliest prey, I guess, unless they try to pull a Darth Maul with Hogan here, have him come back on mechanical spider legs or something like that. But yeah, I mean, that was another moment, that was a bit more graphic than what the first film did. There was there's a certain kind of charm out of where you slice Hogan in half and then he's like laying there on top of his own legs. I thought that was kind of funny. But, but yeah, I mean, I don't think Hogan's going to be back for the threequel the way they did things here.
No. Well, unfortunately, David Pryor passed away, the director of this. He passed away a couple of years after this. I do wonder if there was a sense of like, oh, we'll keep making these movies. But yeah, I think he passed in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And so, that's what, yeah.
I mean, they do plant the seed. I mean, do we want to talk about the big ending here?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, well, and this is one thing too we didn't mention because the movie actually starts, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I want to say the silhouetted shot of of Danton, standing there on the hilltop holding the machine gun in the air. They start the movie with that. It's kind of a reminder of the first film, and that image is in the first film, I think, isn't it?
Yes, it's yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, it's like this victorious thing. I got him, he's holding his gun up in the air. Okay. So they repeat that shot now at the end. Danton goes out there on the hill, silhouetted, he holds it up, and there's the kid joining him doing the same thing. And where we would normally expect to see the words "the end" at the end of the movie, it says "the beginning." So it's like, okay, so we're gonna have Danton and the kid out there in the next one or something like that. I mean, that sure seems like what they're trying to do here. So yeah, or maybe the next film we move on 27 more years and the kid is all grown up and he's the one that gets captured by Hogan's son, and it's the same thing all over again, fathers and sons. I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, I was looking to see. So Ted Pryor himself has not done anything. So there was a movie called Assassin's Fury that came out in 2023, which I think was like the last movie that David Pryor was working on, and I think somebody else finished it. I think that's how it worked. Was that it was like close to being finished or something like that, and it was finally released all those years later. And I wonder if I don't know, with Ted Pryor, he hasn't done anything else either, and I wonder if there's a sense of like, okay, now that my brother's passed, I'm not gonna keep seeking work. But I do wonder if that's a thing, like if people have come to him and said, yeah, because looking at the world we're in right now, this streaming environment where how do you get someone to watch your movie when there's just a sea of thumbnails on Tubi and other places? And it's like, well, if the movie was like you said, Deadliest Prey or something like that, right? It's like that would get people to click. And I do wonder if producers have come to Ted Pryor and said, what if we did another movie? And I wonder if from his mindset, it's like, okay, that was project my brother and I worked on. Now that he's passed, I don't want to do anything else. Because it does sound like they were probably planning to do more sequels and it didn't happen. And I have to feel like other producers would want to make another one of these movies because, again, when you're in that sea of thumbnails, what gets somebody to click? That would be something that would get people to click.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly the possibilities. I mean, stranger things have happened. We see these films that you never expect to have a sequel, and then you never expect to have a threequel or a fourquel or whatever. They just keep on going. And I mean, this is a premise that, I mean, it's good to add things to, but you can repeat that. I mean, this has been done tons of times. And they keep going back to it, so, having, some kind of, evil force, whether they're a militia of some sort, or they're just rich, bored people or whatever, hunting, men that, we've seen that a million times. So it's a premise that they keep on going back to. You could certainly keep on doing things that are in this franchise. Even if it's not Ted Pryor, it can be, son of Danton, son of Danton. It can, it can keep going forever and ever. So.
Well, because 13 years later, I imagine the son's got to be in his 20s now, right? So was he in his teen? Was he like, he looked like he was maybe like 11 or 12, right?
Yeah, I would say 10, 11, something like that, probably. Yeah, so he'd be right at the right age to do it. So.
Yeah, because to your point, everybody does this sort of most dangerous game thing, but also it's a very, I don't know what to say. It's something that studios like for direct to video because it's always in a short one location.
Right.
So let's go to Puerto Rico and we'll call it whatever we want to call it, but we can shoot in Puerto Rico in the rainforest there or something like that, and just have all our characters running around, or find a studio lot and just go in one set. Like the Millennium Film guys, they have their studio in Bulgaria, and it's like, oh, it's great if you can use the Bulgaria lot because then you don't have to worry about trying to make like Bulgaria look like Massachusetts or Bulgaria look like California. It's just like okay, we're just in a studio lot. So they love the most dangerous game concept as well for. Because you can keep budgets low. So I have to think that people have come to Pryor about it, and he's just said, maybe down the road, maybe there'll be a point where he does feel like he can do it. But I have to feel like he was just like, you know what? No, my brother's passed. I don't want to do it again.
Well, and what you're saying about locations there, I mean, you watch this movie, and it literally does feel like they've got like a 100 square foot section of foresty type terrain, and they just shot everything in this one little square space. I mean, just it looks like Danton doesn't actually move that far through this whole thing. If you really were to GPS it out, he's not covering tons of ground. He's just staying within that same amount of space there. They shot everything in just a little square.
Well, to your point about Mobile, right? It's like when the techies pick him up outside of the forest, they're driving on what looks like kind of more like beach type sand.
Yeah.
So we're already there. So they probably also did. There might not have been a lot of forest before you hit the ocean because there's no sign that we're in Mobile. There's no sign that we're near the ocean, or I guess it would be the Gulf. There's no sign that we're near any kind of water like that. It's I think again it's supposed to look like the old, which again means that those characters drove from was it like 55 hours I think to drive from Maryland to LA. Got to be something like that. So they somehow they make it out there quickly, but it's it's right. It's like it's essentially three locations, right? It's the factory. Abandoned factory, there's the house, and then there's the forest, and that's it. They do everything in those three places.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to, one other thing I wanted to mention, of course, is that there's the infamous guy with the grenades, and he's blown up, but you just see his smoking feet. And because when we watched this the last time, that was the tip off for me that maybe this is the Deadly Prey is a parody, or meant to be tongue in cheek. When they do it here, there's no question about whether or not it's tongue in cheek, right? It's just like you know right away. This big guy, he just hands him a grenade. The guy holds it, and then suddenly there's smoke, and he disappears. But then you see like a stump of a leg hanging out of some boots.
Yeah. Well, and is there a bit of a gap too? Like he blows up and then we cut away to something else and then they cut back to the boot, so you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's his foot there or whatever. Yeah. It's another one of those things where they're marking off the boxes, some of the things that they hit in the first film. Like we didn't mention, in honor of our friend Will, there is an exploding helicopter in this. It's not a terribly effective exploding helicopter, but it is there. so yeah, they're very much just kind of going, well, what did we do in the first one? Oh, we can do that again. One of the big things they do leave out wasn't in the first film there was a father character of the wife, right?
Cameron Mitchell.
Cameron Mitchell, right? Yeah, who tries to jump in there and intervene and negotiate with Hogan, and then things don't go his way. So yeah, that part of things is kind of left out. That's they kind of like traded him for the techie guys, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think of that. That's right. That you know that he's because technically the two guys that are funding things, they're kind of the Troy Donahue character that was funding
Right.
the
Yeah.
operation there. But beyond that, yeah, they left that character out. They must have felt like you said that the techie characters they felt worked better, which. I guess I don't know. I mean, I was trying to think who they would have even gotten to play that part because obviously Cameron Mitchell. I mean, maybe you get Eric Roberts for a couple scenes because he's the kind of person that would just do anything like that.
Oh my goodness, that would have been a treat. But yeah,
The problem with Eric Roberts, of course, is that he is only 4 years older than Danton, so it would have been weird to play his father-in-law when he's roughly the same age as him. So I don't know what other older actor they could have gotten to play that part in 2013. But yeah, it's again, it's like you said, it was kind of. I mean, I wonder if maybe they did want to have that part, but they couldn't get anybody on the budget, because Cameron Mitchell at that time. I mean, AIP at that time had more money to make those movies, but then Cameron Mitchell, Troy Donahue, they were just like, just give me, I'll do a few pages, just give me the money, and I'm good.
Well, yeah, and I mean I mean one of the things about this one that is very different from the first one. The first one does make that attempt to have at least some washed up star power.
Yeah.
The first one, you've got Cameron Mitchell in there in a small part. I think I'm trying to remember. He may have even gotten top billing.
Yes,
he
did. Yes,
film.
if you look at,
and then you've got Troy Donahue. Yeah. And so, you've got these folks that are names, but their careers are waning and have been for some time. And really, in this follow-up, the only thing that comes close to a name is Ted Pryor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it is one of those things, when it comes to direct-to-video movies, when you're looking on the IMDb page and you're seeing a lot of those gray circles with the silhouettes kind of thing, right? Now, one thing I didn't realize that David Pryor, the director, he's the guy who is asking for directions, I guess. That's I didn't.
Oh.
I didn't know that because he's third billing in this movie in Deadliest Prey. But to your point, Cameron Mitchell was top billed in that movie. I think Troy Donahue was a little bit further down the list of names. But yeah, I mean that was the thing with AIP was that I'm trying to think how many movies they used Cameron Mitchell. I mean, probably the most famous one for MST3K fans is Space Mutiny. Cameron Mitchell played the grandfather slash what I don't really know whatever they called his character, the grandfather slash father of Red Brown's wife's character in that. But yeah, Troy Donahue, he's second built in this, so it's they definitely got names to play those first two bills, and this movie they didn't do anything like that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, Todd, anything else on this movie? I'm trying to think if there's anything that we've missed as we've talked about this one.
Oh, I think we've dug pretty deep on this one. Amazingly, because going in, it felt like, oh, it's just going to be the same thing all over again. But I mean, I think we've hit on the things that are interesting about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it didn't cross my mind when watching the movie and they had these scenes of the bar, people in the bar watching things happen, that would kind of create an impromptu conversation about going to bars and them not being able to change channels. That kind of created a nice tangent for us there, so that helped as well. Yeah.
While you're mentioning the people in the bar again, though, I will say that their placement in the film is very awkward. It's like just all of a sudden there'll be a shot and it's like, here's these people in the bar cheering. It's like, oh, okay. And then you kind of forget about the people in the bar. And then again, there's a brief shot, there's cheer. And you're just like, wait a minute, if you're going to do that kind of thing, give me a few more shots where we are getting to know these people, a little bit, give them some personality so they're not just drunk sitting at the bar cheering, or even giving it an interactive element would have been cool. I mean, maybe for 2013 that was too forward thinking, but it would have been cool if there was some way where the people watching at home could do something that would somehow contribute to things like they can, if we get enough, thumbs up votes, you can give Danton a grenade or, it's something like that. I guess that goes back to that whole potential subplot we were talking about where you've got, people that are, directing and creating the program and trying to make it into this, viral event or something like that. I mean, you could have done a lot with that they just didn't think of here.
Well, to your point, I mean, even like a very simple thing would have just been to have them betting on it, right? Like,
Absolutely.
Just people in the bar saying like, I got 20 that this guy Danton, this guy Danton, he's the best. Like, I think he's going to do it. Really? You think he's going to be able to beat all these guys? Oh yeah. All right. I'll give you 2-1, $20. Yeah, you're on, man. And then, people start betting.
I'm putting my money on sunglasses guy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that would have been an easy thing. It would have been only like, a half a page of script here or there, but see, I think that's the problem, is that they just were getting extras for these scenes and they didn't want to have them, delivering any lines.
I'm sure probably folks in the bar are the same as, some of the guys that try to take out Danton 5 minutes earlier in the movie. So.
Exactly. And so, but it's like, it's one of those things that like, you can do things on the cheap, but if there's a way that you can, and I don't know how much more it would have cost to have them saying lines in the film. But if that was, if it was just that little bit more of having them say lines, and again, I don't know how it works with the Screen Actors Guild. If like my friend is making a movie and I go in the movie and I say a line, right? Like, is that an issue with the Screen Actors Guild that like, Matt, who isn't a Screen Actors Guild member, said a line, like if that's like enough that like, that could cause an issue. But it feels like if you get your friends in a movie, I don't know. I don't know how it works. That maybe like, Pryor was like, no, I'm not going to even get into it. So they don't have any lines. Nobody's betting on it. Nobody's doing anything. But to your point, it would have added a little bit more to because to your point, it felt like it was like, we haven't shown people in the bar in a while. Let's show people in a bar reacting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, it's from a movie standpoint, it's not the classic that the first one was. It's not the kind of thing that like I think if you were doing a bad movie night with friends, Deadly Prey has some elements that like, depending on who's watching it with you, they might be a little bit put off by some of it, but overall people would have a fun time. This is a movie where like I was trying to think of like, how, like the lowest budget movies that I've talked about on the podcast. And this is definitely in that realm of like one of the lowest budget ones.
Yeah. I mean, this one, it can stand on its own, but really a lot of its enjoyment kind of comes from watching the way they retread the stuff that they did in the first film.
Exactly. So, because a lot of the stuff, if you were watching it, you wouldn't get, like, that was kind of obnoxious that the guy blew up and then his leg was hanging in there. It's like, what was that? Or like you said, like the arm cutting off thing, it really is, trying to pay off the fact that people liked it in the first movie. And you'd be like, boy, they really put a lot into that one scene. It just kind of just happened. Whereas like, when you watch Deadly Prey, you're just like, this is ridiculous. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Todd, as we're wrapping up here, anything that you wanted to plug?
Oh, of course, I'll always plug my stuff. So my podcast is called The Forgotten Filmcast. You can find that wherever you find your podcasts. Matt has been a guest on it many times and will be again as long as he's willing. I love having him on the show. But yeah, we talk about the movies that time forgot. So things that have kind of drifted off the radar. Sometimes those are direct-to-video things, but a lot of times it's things that were major releases at the time, but they've just kind of not held on in the public eye and are certainly not considered classics anymore. So we release episodes pretty much every week. I'm a little behind right now because I have been under the weather, but yeah, we're moving forward with that here in the new year, having lots of fun with it. So yeah, check us out.
Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, we mentioned that in the description as well. It's funny because your movies are forgotten, because they're ones that time is kind of forgotten. I had Jay Cluett from Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, on, and we were talking about this movie called Into the Grizzly Maze. It had Scott Glenn, who was essentially playing the same character in Into the Grizzly Maze. He wasn't a firefighter, he was a sheriff, but pretty much everything else about his character was the same as it was in Firestorm, which we talked about. And I wanted to mention that to Jay, and of course he hadn't seen Firestorm. It's like one of those things that like, the movies that we talk about on your podcast, they're ones that most people haven't seen. And so it's hard to reference them with other people because they're like, no, I haven't seen Firestorm. I don't know what that movie is.
Yeah, it's it's just another example of how one of the things that's great about being a film fan is there's so much stuff out there that you just don't even realize exists. You know, there's all these movies to check out. I mean, you mentioned Into the Grizzly Maze. I'm like on here, I'm typing it in, Into the Grizzly Maze. I pull it up on Letterboxd. What? James Marsden, Piper Boop, Thomas Jane? Oh my gosh, what the heck is this? So yeah. Thank you for adding another thing to the watch list.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Well, because Jay, being Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, I wanted something that was like connecting to the movie Deep Blue Sea, and we were like, okay, what if we do Thomas Jane, because he's done a ton of direct-to-video movies, and he
it's Animals Attack too. It looks like, right?
Exactly. We got a bear attack in there as well. So he mentioned that. I was like, okay, perfect. And so so we decided to do that one, and it was like, oh, yep, so it was a good deal there. So yeah, and that reminds me, I completely forgot to cancel the 7-day trial that I was doing for the thing to get the movie for free on Amazon. So it ended up costing me $7 now. So I was like, yeah. So I gotta do that when we wrap up here. I gotta immediately take that off. So
I guess housekeeping things. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Perfect. Well, thanks again, Todd. This was another fun conversation. I think, this is a movie that was I was trying to think about what we could talk about, but I kept seeing this one pop up on Tubi. Tubi kept recommending it. I was like, all right, why don't we give it a try and see what happens there? So so thank you again for coming on. And thank you everybody for listening.
I mean, when they make the third one, then I'll be there, So
yes, exactly. Sorry about that. There's a little delay there. Yeah, if we get a third one at some point, we'll definitely we'll plan to do that one as well. All right. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.